Om mano na buddhi na shariram na indriyam na tanmatram na buddhani na bhutta panchakam. Aham kritaschapi vyat swarupakam tamisham atmanam upuiti shashvatam. Om shantihi shantihi shantihi. That one attains to the highest reality, who dissolves the mind, the intellect, the gross and subtle senses, the tanmatras, the gross and subtle elements, along with the ego, into the ocean of Brahman, that absolute reality. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Agnir Murta Chakshusi Chandra Suryo Vishaha Shrotri Vak Vivrita Shavedaha Vayu Prana Hridaya Vishvamasham Padbayam Prativihi Sarvabhutantaratmam. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Verily, that one Supreme Being is the indwelling consciousness in all things. Fire is its head, the sun and moon are its two eyes. The revelation of Scripture is its cosmic mind. Its arms and legs are the four directions. The universe is its heart. The wind is its breath, music is its voice, and from its feet the earth has originated. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvo Vahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishvavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. We welcome you all here in our midst at the SRV Hawaii Retreat Center in Waimea on the Big Island, out in the middle of the Ganga Pacifica, we like to call her. She's thousands of miles of water all around us. She's very pure still by today's terms, standards. And so we're surrounded by a large body of water, just like these tattvas I just mentioned, basically the body, the senses, the subtle senses, the elements, the subtle elements, and the ego and the intellect are all surrounded by consciousness. We must use that as rather like an analogy or a metaphor in order to envision the truth of the matter, is that everything is permeated, saturated like sweetness in sugarcane juice, the great master Sri Ramakrishna used to say, with consciousness and consciousness alone. So in India, if you had to pick a word, at least in English, it would be Chaitanya probably in India, but in Sanskrit, but here you'd call it consciousness with a capital C. Not the consciousness that is a state you pass in and out of, like waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, back to waking, or when you get hit on the head and go unconscious, as they say. That's all happening to your tattvas, to these, they call it antakarna, the fourfold mind, ego, intellect, and pitta, the thoughts. So all of those can turn off and turn on. And so that's consciousness that comes and goes, as it were. But Brahman doesn't come and go, that consciousness, it's all pervasive with a capital C. So you could also choose another word, awareness, with a capital A, of course, like Atman. So we have to envision that, since it's not apparent, it's fallen to the background. In fact, it's a good definition for Brahman. It's the background or backdrop for everything, out of which everything came, but it can't be called a cause for anything, Brahman. It's the causeless cause, sometimes they call it that. The cause would be more like the Word. In the beginning was the Word. That's what Christ meant to say when he told that to John and so forth, is that you can trace everything back to the A-U-M, we call it, or Om. And that would be the cause of things. But there's a causeless cause beyond the word. Somebody had to utter the word or strike the sound. Sometimes they call the unstruck sound. It has to be struck. And so this all bridges on the topic of our class today without going into a long preamble that you don't know what I'm talking about yet as far as it pertains to the title of our class, Form and Formlessness. So we want to look at those two dynamics, or those two sides of the coin, you might say. And when you're talking about it in terms of AUM, you're talking about it in terms of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. And when you hit deep sleep, you begin to go formless. But the thing about deep sleep is that it still has cause in it. It doesn't have the effect anymore. So karma has temporarily been put into abeyance, is how they say it in the scriptures. But effect comes back when you dream, of course, because there's got to be a source from which the images in dream and the sounds you hear and the tastes you taste and the smells you smell and the skies you fly in and the bodies you take on in dream all have to have a cause. So that's in a seed form back in deep sleep. We study this in Advaita Vedanta quite a bit, and the great luminary, Gaudapada, he was an illumined soul. So he told us that, gave us the more current skinny on that, if you will, in 500, 600 AD about waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. But so that all has to do with form, because since deep sleep has seeds in it, it still has to be somewhat in the realm of form. So they say that is the effect is there in waking, when you see everything and taste everything and touch everything, objects. But then when you go into dreaming, it becomes a subtle effect. And now it's not so tangible anymore. It's not, the senses have become subtle, the gross elements have become subtle, so that's why I just chanted buddhi, mana na buddhi, so mind or intellect, tanmatram indriyam, not the subtle elements nor the senses, indriyam, nor bhuta, the objects, nor the bhuta panchakam, the five elements, none of those exist in deep sleep except in seed form. So then to go beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, you'd have formlessness with a capital F. So Sri Krishna says that quite often. He says, "Verily, I have my manifested form and my unmanifested form. Beyond both is my supremely unmanifested form." It's a very beautiful and pithy saying out of the Bhagavad Gita that Sri Krishna tells us very early on in India's ages, yugas, the earlier yugas. So what's he saying is that manifested form is like waking, and then unmanifested form is like sleeping. Dream and deep sleeper, unmanifested. This all becomes dissolved into the next state, and now you're seeing it in a subtle sense, hearing it in a subtle sense, hearing and dream and so forth. So these are the subtle senses they talk about that we don't know much about. We don't invest much energy or much belief in them because we think that's all kind of a figment of our dream imagination and that this is real. But when Vedanta comes along and Buddhism comes along and says this is not real out here, it's empty, they mean that there's, and if you go inside of yourself, the kingdoms of heaven within, you'll start seeing subtler forms and having subtler experiences like in dream and deep sleep. So that begins to bridge on the formless, but that is a kind of formlessness because this form is gone. So you have form with a lowercase f out here and formlessness with a lowercase f inside. But then beyond both, he says, is my supremely unmanifested state. So this would be what they call the fourth state, or Turiya, or Turyatita. That's formlessness with a capital F. And that's the ocean of Brahman we just chanted about. That one attains to the supreme state of Brahman, who dissolves all these things, mind, intellect, senses, elements, along with the ego, because the ego will be one of the last things to go, the sense that I'm separate from everything. See, but actually really everything has come out of me, and then I have to take myself and put it into Brahman, to realize through the word that inside of the Atman, my own true nature, is this word humming, like 1,000 bumblebees, and then inside of that is the unstruck sound beyond that is Brahman. So you have to take all that and dissolve it all back into the ocean of Brahman. Just like a hailstone would fall into an ocean, Shankara says, because that's Shankara's shloka I opened with, out of the Vivekachudamani, the crest jewel of discrimination. He's wearing a crest jewel of discrimination, Viveka. Carries it around with him all the time, takes it off, polishes, puts it back on. Just like Holy Mother would take her Atman out like a diamond and polish it off, put it back in, see, and then go on working as if formless reality didn't exist. And if you looked at her, somebody looked at her eating bread on the floor, oh, I see you're just ordinary like us. And she said, yes, I have to engage in this work just like you, but if any time I want, I can take my Atman out of hiding and look at it like you would look at a fruit in the palm of your hand. Hasta Amalaka. It's actually one of the names of Shankara's students, Hasta Amalaka. You got that name, fruit in the palm of your hand. So she admitted, or revealed, as it were, that taking this Atman out of hiding was within her abilities, and probably inferring that it should be within all of our abilities too, because if we don't take it out every once in a while, then we forget it. We forget it's there. So that's why you're here in class today with me, to remember that all of this wisdom of the Dharma comes from that ultimate source, or the causeless cause. It has to have a medium or a matrix through which to come, because Brahman remains formless, remains perfect, remains all-pervasive, remains indivisible, under all circumstances at all time, beyond time and circumstance. So it needs a matrix with which to emanate forth these things. That's a kind of a light, or we call it the light of consciousness, Param Jyoti, or we call it Divine Mother Shakti, we'd say, Mother Kali, takes this formless form of Paramashiva and brings it out into the next level for manifestation. Remember, some months ago we were sitting here and I had the 4 stages of the word right here on this chart stand, and we went through all of those stages, from Param to Vishanti to Madhyamaka, or Madhyama, to Vaikari, the 4 stages of the word, how the word comes out from hiding. So bringing things out from hiding is much better than just falling victim to the fact, or to the thought that they don't exist. Oh, since I don't see them, touch them, taste them, hear them, smell them, then they don't exist. You're putting God in with them, then, Brahmins. But if you say Brahman is invisible, like water is to a fish, and they swim all around it and they deny it. See, oh, I don't think the ocean exists, they say to each other. Somebody said it did, but my great-grandfather was a great old wise fish, but, and he thought the ocean existed, that water existed. So it's sort of like that. People are oblivious to the obvious fact that existence is, that consciousness is. So there's a question in English literature. You see, Shakespeare, to be or not to be. It's famous, probably everyone down to grade school knows that after a while. Probably looking at a skull saying that. So they think that that's high philosophy. Well, it's a kind of philosophy, but it's not really a question that Vedanta would pose, to be or not to be, because Vedanta believes everything is, ultimately. So you can't say not to be or not to be. You are. So to be part of that statement is right. Not to be isn't possible. You cannot not be. Tell the bee that. Can you not be? See, no, I have to be a bee, I'm sorry. See, so it's impossible, but you can become formless and think that that you're not. You see, but everyone says I am. Nobody says I'm not. If they walk around, their very existence, they're saying, as it were, I am. That thou art. I and my Father are one. Those kinds of statements are very positive, affirmative statements at a very high level of non-dual philosophy, the highest level. So you cannot really say to be or not to be, because not to be would mean to become unconscious, and certainly people do achieve that when they get on the Mayic wheel or the Kala Chakra. They think that just their body exists and just matter, and so they don't have to dissolve the mind, the intellect, the five senses, the five elements, and along with the ego into anything, because anything doesn't exist, to be or not to be. So what we would say rather, and it pertains to the title of this class, Form and Formlessness, or Formlessness and Form, we'd say rather to be or to become would be a better way of saying it, philosophically correct way of saying it, to be or to become. Because if you be, if you say I am, then you are that and nothing can change that. So if you say, should I become, then that's when you leave the state of formlessness. So to say, to be, then I am the Atman, I am Brahman, I and my Father are one, those statements become clear. I am one with the Father, or one with absolute consciousness. But to become then would be more philosophically correct, because there are beings who then decide to leave this ocean of indivisible consciousness and take on a form. In some philosophies, that's a bad move. You see, it's definitely a bad move if you don't do it in full consciousness, Vivekananda said. Should a man be reborn? I hope he doesn't, he said. Not unless he can do so in full consciousness. So that means if he can come into a form and not forget the beingness that he came from, as he takes on this veil of becoming, then he's okay. See, the soul is okay. But otherwise, to forget, then it's going to be a very difficult proposition, because then you can fall into suffering and rounds of birth and death and ignorance. Buddha called it the Kala Chakra, or we can call it samsara, or even Maya. So you don't want to fall into the illusion that becoming is a reality for you, that the soul ever develops, or that it has to mature, or that it has to transform. Next year, I will give a talk called Transgression, Transmigration, Transcendence, and Transparency. I'm going tranny on everyone. I'll get the car out, get my transmission going. So, philosophically speaking, so basically, transmigration, or is going from body to body without knowing what's happening to yourself. You don't ever keep a thread of awareness. And then that's transgression, and then transmigration would be this round of birth and death and ignorance, and then transcendence would be to get beyond form and to develop a witness consciousness. And then transparency would be the great souls. You see, they're completely transparent. There's no ego left in them. You say that about great beings like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Ramana Maharshi. Those are the two best examples in this day, in this time. We have somebody who is totally transparent, see-through kind of transparency. Their ego is not there clouding the issue anymore. And as you come down the spectrum of illumined souls, the ego gets a little bit less transparent, a little bit more murky, cloudy, and so forth, till finally it gets thick, like with the curtain of mesh, it's kind of thick, and people fall below the line, fall below the heart chakra, and are born in lower realms, and then there's absolutely thickness, as thick as a brick, is the expression. I don't know a thing about, in fact, since they don't know a thing, they don't remember anything that happened to them before their birth. So we'll look at that also subject today if we get through these two charts of how Krishna and Holy Mother, both exemplars really of the middle path, and along with Lord Buddha, talked about the process of embodiment. They both had very pertinent teachings to the subject. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time with that, because form and formlessness, we want to stick more to the philosophical and somewhat to the cosmological, but it comes to the personal. We've done that enough. We've had enough of these classes where we've discussed the process of embodiment, although it's always a good thing to remind ourselves about, because here we are. I mean, who can deny that you took on a body? Some people are affirming that they took on a body and that they've had bodies before. Other people are thinking, this is my only body and the only time I'll ever be born, and I won't exist after this, you see. And then other people say, I was never born, like Shankara. Aham nirvikalpa, I am aham, the highest state, and I never took on a mind or a body. I never suffered karma, even though I thought I did sometimes. So there's actually kind of three levels of thinking in that way. Just cloudy or thick, and then a little bit more informed as to the fact that reincarnation exists, and then beyond both. So isn't it much like formlessness and formlessness with a capital F, you see? So you see these triputis, AUM, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, formlessness, and ultimate formlessness. They all can be drawn together, parallel, side by side, to make sense out of every philosophy that's ever been uttered in Mother India, in the subcontinent of Mother India, and pertinent to whatever age you happen to be in. At the particular time when you were fortunate enough to hear the Dharma for the first time in that yuga, or in that series of lifetimes, because that will awaken you up and free you. You cannot get freedom without discrimination, viveka. Cannot get enlightenment without Jnana Yoga. You have to know. And if people appear to be getting freedom from bhakti and from meditation and so forth, then they've had it before. People who have been rotating, as Krishna says, on the wheel of birth and death in tamas or in rajas, the tamasic people fall into birth again and again. The rajasic people stay in one place. And just, it's only the sattvic beings that tend to rise, and then beyond sattva, of course, would be pure sattva. So there again you have three things, and an ultimate. Waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and turiya. So, to be or not to be is not really a philosophically sound question. Ask to be or to become. I should decide that. If you're looking at a skull, see, then, and you're saying that, then that's very pertinent, you see. He says, well, here's what happened when I became. I developed a cranial vault with a circle of bones around it to protect it, and I thought my limited thinking through this skull, and then it died, and then the brain, just decayed inside of it, and all went back to the five elements, and that's me? Then how come I'm here looking at the skull again? Anyone's skull, to speak of my own. I've seen piles of skulls. I've seen that after war, or after certain things have happened to people. There's a whole mountain of skulls. Somebody was climbing with a stick when I saw a picture of that. So when you sit on top of the pile of skulls and said to be or not to be, you should say to be or to become. So that's kind of the premise for which we're undertaking this first class. To be or to become, I should ask that. And if I am to become, that is, if I'm going to get into the cycle of transmigration, as obviously I have, my consciousness is now identified with the body. And remember what Vedanta says about that. Is it identified with the body, or is it just associating with the body? That's a fine distinction to make. See? So if somebody says, are you the body? And she says, well, I'm associating with it right now. I can't really say that I'm not the body, because here I am. So it seems real to me, just like it does to any fool. But I can say that I'm only associating with it, and that gives me the edge. You see, that gives me the form to formlessness bridge to get to ultimate formlessness. Now I can consider, since I have lived before, that maybe I lived all the time. Maybe I never died. maybe birth and death is an illusion. And you see how it then stacks up philosophically inside of you. It's a gathering together a bunch of insights, and when you get those insights together, boom, all of a sudden there's realization. There's a major realization. It's sort of like climbing to the top of a mountain of skulls and finally figuring out that death happens to people. Because they asked Shankar about that, what's the most amazing thing you've ever seen? That death is all around people, and they see it happening to everyone around them, even their loved ones, but they never think, I'm going to die, he said. Trying to say that sitting on top of a mountain of skulls. So, to be or to become is the question then, and I'm putting that in correlation between formlessness and form. To be is formlessness, to become is form. And we want to look at several charts. I mean, we can look at this from the standpoint of the iceberg. We can look at it from the standpoint of the bell. We can look at it from the standpoint of the 5 Russian dolls. The 7 limbs of yoga, and so forth. The ancient chest of consciousness, and then Nirguna and Saguna Brahman, because that's probably one of the most hands-on systems that we know of from ancient India. The rishis, before the Vedanta period really developed, the Vedic period was in operation, running along smoothly with lots of realized souls, illuminating their children and their families. Whole families got together and studied the Dharma, and one of them had enough insight eventually to write an Upanishad, name it after the family. Svetashvatara Upanishad, for instance, we studied that a couple years ago. Svetashvatara was a great-grandsire of his line. So you had whole families getting together, talking about this every day, just like people out here would talk about gardening or golf or whatever. So in that way, then, they would talk about both being and becoming. And since they were in the mode of becoming at that time, they were trying to take their minds and place it beyond the 6 transformations. Birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. Those are 6 things that happen in the realm of becoming. I mean, think about it. You're born, so there's form all of a sudden. I could stop and elucidate on that, because in the Bardo state, you were a subtle form before you took the gross form. So you probably were formed for a long time. To be formless, if it's sans the physical body and the physical elements and the physical senses, then that's a kind of formlessness, but it's still a seed. So we're not calling that formlessness with a capital F yet. That would be enlightenment or self-realization or indivisibility, homogeneity, different words you have to borrow from English to kind of give you that idea of something that has no divisions. It's just one infinite mass of pure conscious awareness. Om Drishyam Pratitam Pravilapayansan. Brahman is an indeterminable mass of pure conscious awareness. You can't find the end to it, and you can't find any divisions in it. It's borderless, it's boundaryless. And when the soul gets into it, it becomes that. That's being. And the experience has been had by thousands of beings. Beings who be. And they've come back, some of them, to tell us about it, to try and get us interested in formlessness with a capital F. Well, cosmologically, you can look at it in terms of Nirguna and Saguna, and let's look at that to start out. It's really got to be one of my favorite charts of these 325 or so that I've created now for us to look at. 150 of these are now colorized. I'm beginning to work on the colorized versions and put them up on a website for people so they can have these mounted on their walls and teach their children and so forth. Dharma art wisdom charts, get them out there to people. Blending of beautiful art and the wisdom teachings of India and of all religions really, but we're focusing mainly on India because they focus on formlessness and have a lot to say about cosmology and philosophy along the way. Somebody asked me before the live streaming audience joined us, what does this mean, these swirling clouds and all this around you? It's like she's penetrating through physical space, from a subtle space, and showing us her vision. And this is, light coming off of her. And she's penetrating through the akasha of space, as if sort of like, looking in on us to see what we're doing. Swami Vivekananda gave us that teaching too, that he had appeared, maybe hadn't been here for 500 to 1,000 years, and all of a sudden came to this, took on a body and to see what we were doing. So they can do that without taking on a physical body. They can look in on us. That's why you feel them in your consciousness, or you have a vision sometimes. They're actually penetrating through their gross coverings that you took on. Na manaha, na buddhi, na indriyam, na shariram, na bhutani, na bhutapanchakam. I mean, India has listed them all for you. 5 gross elements, 5 subtle elements, 5 gross senses, 5 subtle senses, the mind, the intellect, the ego. We know this to be the 24 cosmic principles that Lord Kapila gave us so long ago. That's why we've studied them here. So we can be cosmologically correct, so then we can be philosophically correct, so then we can finally be spiritually correct. Because people are jumping in to try and be spiritually correct without knowing the philosophy and the cosmology yet. It's doing a great disservice to India in this first 160 or 55 years since Swami Vivekananda brought it to us in 1893 to America. It's a great disservice to not take up all levels of India's offering and fill in the gaps, so that not only your understanding will be complete, but your realization will be absolute when it happens to you. When the Mother's grace brings about enlightenment, satori, samadhi, sampragyata, beatific vision, whatever you want to call it, that it will be complete when it happens. And you won't have holes and gaps that you have to come back and fill in later. Well, I think I'll be born, I don't have any karma anymore, I don't have to suffer, I don't have to enjoy, nothing really here attracts me, so what should I do? I think I should come back to make myself a better teacher, a better knower of Brahman. That is, all of Brahman's worlds are in the realm of form, aren't they? But Brahman itself alone is formless. So if I've become Brahman and I know Brahman, there's really nothing left for me to do unless I want to take on a vow to come back and help other souls also realize that they should give up the ruse of becoming. See, the pretense of becoming. Because there's some danger in that. Risk of falling into believing that you are the form. It happens in heaven too. They believe that they're going to heaven and that's the last state for them, but there's still a form there. Celestial form, angelic form, some god or some goddess is a form. Well, it's one thing to know that all these forms exist back inside of you, and they're not anywhere outside. At least we can go that far, as we've been outside now, and we haven't seen anything but more of the same. In fact, less of the same up there, because here you have 5 elements, and up there 3, so far. So it must be a grand impetus that would turn you around and start exploring the kingdoms of heaven within you. My Father's mansion has many chambers. And now you're beginning to head toward the realm of formlessness. But before you get to formlessness with a capital F, you're going to have to go into formlessness in potential, in abeyance, in seed form, and in dream form. And as you pass through dreams, you're going to have to wake up from dreams eventually. That's why Ramana Maharshi said, dream number 1 here, dream number 2 tonight. Actually, the most pregnant part of that saying is that this is dream number 1. Everyone knows that dreams exist tonight for you. You had them. I had some really great dreams last night, in fact. Better not think of them right now or I won't be able to give this talk, but met a couple luminaries, sages, that were talking with me, and I remember it. So to have those experiences inside is everyone's experience. It's common to everyone to have those kinds of experiences. Dreams, that is. Maybe not profound dreams all the time, but then I don't have them all the time either. So talk to some of your Sufi friends. They're having technicolor dreams with jeweled palaces and being with Muhammad and so forth all the time, it sounds like. But the point being here is that when you come back to waking state, Ramana Maharshi is calling this a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Life is but a dream. I mean, somebody's thought of that before, so it's dream-like. You know, it's you could call it illusory or transitory, mutable. There's other words we've borrowed. Empty. See, we talked about empty. Empty of form means some sort of formlessness, doesn't it? So all of this is a repetitive review for my students sitting here and for some of my students watching. But we have to keep on speaking about this apparent subdivision between form and formlessness. Eventually, when all is Brahman, that doesn't exist anymore. You could be right here in this body with these senses, knowing that Brahman exists everywhere. And so it doesn't depend on whether or not you're in a form or beyond a form. It only depends if you're in a form or beyond a form if you know about Brahman. If you don't know about Brahman, then you're up a stream without a paddle and you have no ocean to flow to. See? It's not just upstream without a paddle. There are people like that, but you don't know where your stream is headed to. Maybe headed to a lake, maybe headed underground, but you want it to head to the ocean. Yatta nadyaha shandamanaha samudre ashtam gachanti namarupa vihaya tatha vidvan namarupa muktihi parit param parusham, the supreme soul, upuiti parit param parusham. So you have may we always be like mighty rivers flowing into the sea. That's what basically that's saying. And losing all sense of name, form, and identity. So that's formlessness. First into the dream state, then a grand formlessness into what is indescribable, what you cannot, you can speak about and around it, but you can't describe it itself. It has to be experienced. Best exemplar for that, Sri Ramakrishna, in this day and age. That's why we like to sing to him. Parama Guru Sri Ramakrishna, Parama Guru Sri Ramakrishna, Aho Pranam Namaskar, Paramahamsa Sri Ramakrishna, Paramahamsa Shri Ramakrishna, Matri Bhakta Yugavatar. So Matri Bhakta, devotee of the Divine Mother, Yuga Avatar, the divine incarnation of this age. So we like to think about him because he showed us what formlessness with a capital F is all about, in no uncertain terms, in front of everyone, the world culture at the time. And then Vivekananda brought it into the vaster world culture for us. And behind them all was Divine Mother, whose birthday we celebrated yesterday. Sri Sharda Devi's birthday was yesterday. So we celebrated it here in our shrine room, classroom. So Nirguna and Saguna is another way of saying in Sanskrit. Nirguna means basically beyond gunas. Gunas are attributes. There's three of them that are subdivided, sattva, rajas, and tamas. The gunas are upon every mind. They're upon every world. They're upon every state of thinking and existence. And they're certainly upon non-thinking and non-existence too. Tamas is great dullness. Rajas is a great restlessness, and sattva is a great joy, a great pleasure, and a pleasure that you need to transcend in order to get to evenness. Yogic equipoise is beyond sattva. People who manage to get to sattva, and fine, they're not restless anymore and they're not brooding anymore, but they still have this kind of subtle attachment to bliss, joy, and so forth. So in order to have the highest state of formlessness, you're going to have to transcend that. It's like going beyond the AUM of Om to get to absolute reality. And so you'll have to dissolve even the ego into that. We just said, right, aham kritas japi. So you dissolve all those things, mind and intellect and senses and elements, along with the ego, because the ego is what's enjoying that subtle bliss that's keeping you in a form. You can have very beautiful dreams, as we say, and just kind of stay in the realm of dream. There's a beings they describe in India called Prakriti Layas. They like to manipulate Prakriti, both manifested and unmanifested, but they're very adept at manipulating the unmanifested Prakriti, the stuff of dreams. They can create whole worlds in their dreams and live in them. And that's where you get these ideas like cloud castles in the sky, these sayings. There's a few others you can think of, cloud castles in the sky and flowers as clouds and so forth. So those are imaginations, what we call sankalpa in Sanskrit, and there are people who are major at that. They lose themselves in that, just like some people have lost themselves in the element earth. And the element water, well, let's not even bring in the other four elements. They're just earthbound. They might not even want to go near an ocean or near fire. And they're not aware that they even live on air, or that there's an akasha that holds their planet, what to speak of holds all the worlds inside of them, a supreme akasha, mahakasha. So none of these things are just earth for me, thank you. That's enough. So to be aware of these deeper verities is to be spiritually inclined. And there's not that many people in the Kali Yuga that are. It frightens them, puts them off. And in other words, maybe it's too much time to explore it. I have to preoccupy myself with other things. So when you look at a chart like this, so let's start studying something that is of a definitive nature, that is more tactile. In other words, you need to hear these words, you also need to see something. Hearing and seeing are two very subtle elements in us, subtler than smelling and tasting. So when you see something like this, it helps you put together with the words to form a kind of a more concrete vision or concept, at least, of the Dharma and what it's trying to tell you and how it's trying to inspire you and compel you. So the power of the Dharma compels you. So forget about negative things and demonic possessions. The power of this, the power of that, occult powers. The power of Dharma is what you want, because that'll take you up and out of this illusion of becoming and into the very smack dab in the very middle of the fact that you are pure being. Sri Ramakrishna's favorite word for it, Akanda Satchidananda. You see, Pratip Chandra Mazumdar said, "My mind is still reeling from being in the presence of that man." Who was that man? Sri Ramakrishna. So he went into the presence of Sri Ramakrishna. He said, he was amazing, he was an idolater. But at the same time, he said that he meditated on the highest consciousness, called, what he liked to call, Akanda Satchidananda. His worship was transcendentalism. He goes on like this, he's saying, see, beautiful, just by being in the presence of Sri Ramakrishna when he was alive in the 1800s. So his devotion was transcendentalism, his wisdom was compassion. So he took jnana and bhakti and turned them around on each other and faced them and made them work together in an integral way. And that's what a great soul like that does. Oh, he's not a common priest, Pratip said. He's not a common priest or even a common holy man. He doesn't like formalities and rituals and a lot of things like that. So in that way, he was an idolater, means he was a priest of Mother Kali in the Dakhinesha temple in India at the time, but he meditated on Akanda Satchidananda. Akanda Satchidananda, the indivisible reality. Sat, Chit, Ananda, existence, knowledge, and bliss. Absolute. Not happiness that's off and on again, but bliss that's absolute. It's unalloyed and uninterrupted. When you get it, it keeps going. It's like the ever-ready bunny, or whatever they call it, you see. It just keeps going and going. And Sat, pure existence, and Ananda, pure bliss. See. So, in that way, he was a master of these higher climbs of awareness, or the highest climb of awareness. He climbed the climbs and knew himself as pure being. And when he was here in a body, the fact of becoming to him was a matter of aparinama, non-transformation. That's another word that you could look at. Non-transformation is aparinama, that would be being, and parinama would be becoming. So if you believe in change, then you're a parinamist. You believe in change as being the ultimate reality, but reality doesn't change. The religions all the great founders of the religions will tell you this. So then you have to shift over to what? Well, I don't know what's different than change, because everything here is changing. You see what a predicament you're in. I'm trying to find something that's changeless, but it's not here. That's why Christ called it shifting sands. You can't build your house on it. And Buddha, before him, 550 years, said, I've seen how Maya builds houses here, how you build houses in Maya. You build houses of stone, you build houses of flesh and bone, you build houses of mentation. And so I've given up building all houses here. I'm not building a house on sand anymore. This is all change. So you see, where do I go then to find reality if it's not here? I have to go beyond. I'll have to go from the idea of becoming to being. And whether I do that in terms of 3 steps, 5 steps, 7 steps, 8 steps, you know what I'm talking about? The 3s, there are plenty of them, but 5 would be the 5 koshas, 7 would be the 7 states of awareness in yoga, 8 would be anywhere from 8 limbs of yoga to the Eightfold Path of Buddha, or maybe 24 steps. And cosmology and Samkhya, to take all the 24 cosmic principles and meditate them back in and dissolve them into my true self. Because I've come out, and as I came out, I brought them with me. They concretized to different degrees, and then I believed in them. It's all right if you believe in them temporarily, but if you believe in them ultimately, then you burn the seeds to get back. See, what's that they say? You leave breadcrumbs. Yes, thank you. You leave breadcrumbs, because you're not thinking of the birds out there. They like breadcrumbs. The little birds of forgetfulness will peck away at the breadcrumbs you leave from earth, back to heaven, or back to higher heaven, back to the gods and goddesses, back to the Trinity, see them, and all the way back into yourself. See, you left breadcrumbs on your way out, but the little birds of forgetfulness picked them up. Now you're going to have to what? Reconnect the dots. You know those little puzzles? You have to reconnect the dots. The dots out here are what? Atomic particles. So about as small in dots as you can get. And if you're a physicist and you start to connect them outwardly, you're not going anywhere. If you connect them inwardly, then you find out that there are other particles that are subtler and subtler. There are particles of energy, not just matter. And then there are particles of thought, not just energy. And then there are particles of intelligence, not just mentation, you see. And so you're taking some 5 steps back into your Atman again, which is waiting for you with open arms. It was there before you even began to search for it. What happened all of a sudden? I had in my thought all of a sudden, oh, maybe I'm divine. That's just all of a sudden the Atman suggesting it to you. Well, it's about time you woke up to that thought. Pursue it now. There are little birds of forgetfulness. There are also these little rascally birds that make you doubt yourself. Little birds of doubt. So find the position, hear it, hold it, and never let go again. You're holding on to the wrong things. Holding on to objects, they're empty of the ability to fulfill you, and they're empty of even substance. They're just particles changing at a billionth of a second. So why grab onto that? See, it's like trying to grab water or air. You're grabbing onto the wrong things. Grab onto the fact that this self is divine and hold that. And let everything else go. And keep this as the foundation of your thought every day. So those beings that do that can graduate out of air, earth, fire, water, and hearing. Hearing, feeling, seeing, air, earth, fire, water, and ether, Hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting, and touching. Audibility, tangibility, visibility, flavor, odor. And speaking, acting, moving, procreation, and excretion. You see how beautiful India has put it for you? Those are 20 of the 24 cosmic principles of Samkhya. Who did their homework so nicely there? See? And then who connected them? Well, you disconnected them. That's the problem. Now you have to hear about them again and reconnect them, that's all. What is it then? Hearing goes with speaking, feeling goes with acting, seeing goes with moving, tasting goes with procreation, smelling goes with excretion, hearing goes with audibility, feeling goes with tangibility, seeing goes with visibility, tasting goes with flavor, smelling goes with odor, hearing goes with ether, feeling goes with air, seeing goes with fire, tasting goes with water, smelling goes with earth. You can look at each one of those connections. Pancha, fivefold, right? And you can step in 5 at a time, connect them to each other, and just remember how they all, where you came from, and there's your breadcrumbs again. Undisturbed. The birds of forgetfulness can't really destroy them. They come back. They're seeds in your mind. And all you need to do is ponder them and put them back together again and find your way home. So, and notice this is all at the level of the 3 lower chakras, if you want to call it. I don't think I put the chakras here, but you could say the 3 lower chakras, the 4th chakra, the 5th and 6th and 7th chakras. You could put them right up. What they did here was, from waking state to dreaming state is all here in gross and subtle form. The visionary stage is here. The deep sleep state is here, just below formlessness. And then actual formlessness happens here. So solid form, dreaming form, deep sleep form, because it still has seeds. That's where everything comes out of, your deep sleep state, consciousness. Then get beyond this grunty here, it's called a knot or a veil, and you find formlessness, formless dynamism. That's where you find Mother Shakti. And beyond that, the formless Brahman, Turiya. So you can put it in terms of these levels of your own awareness. Waking, dreaming, visionary, deep sleep. I add visionary sleep in there to sort of connect dreaming with deep sleep. So basically that's an ancient system of non-duality that helps you to unfasten your attachments to waking, dreaming, and deep sleep as your states of consciousness. Make you aware of them first, and then unfasten them. See, so it's sort of like somebody walking up to a hot air balloon and saying, "I think I'll go for a ride." But they have to let go of the fastenings first, right? Well, first I've got to let go of the moorings. I've got to cut the sandbags off there, then I can fly. So you can't fly unless you lift off, cut off these sandbags. I'm not air, I'm not earth, I'm not fire, I'm not ether. Not only I'm not those, I'm also not mano bujya hamkara chitani naham nacha shrotra jiyuve nacha grana netre Nachavyoma Bhumir Natejo Navayu Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham Om meaning waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and Turiya, AUM, and the little half moon with the dot. Call it the smile, one-eyed smile. See, above the Om sign. So he says, na mano na buddhi, na hamkara. I'm not the mind, intellect, and ego. Funny, he puts those first because actually they came first. Then he puts, I'm not fire, air, ether, vyoma, and so forth. Because he wants you to know that the mind birthed 5 elements. The mind birthed the worlds. Not Brahman, and they couldn't do it by themselves. Maya makes it look like they did it by themselves, but were you here 4 billion years ago to see it? Or is it just speculation on your part that that's how long it's taken to fashion a world, one world amidst millions? And you're not even accounting for the inner worlds yet. That's a big mistake. You're looking up into outer space, spending lots of money and polluting the atmosphere, sending rockets up there for something that's probably not up there and not reachable, and you're not looking back into the heart of contentment, which would make you forget such journeys, such wastages of time and money. What good is all of that when you could be feeding starving people and helping others? You'd be helping them get back to their Atman, because they need strength to do that. But you're just leaving them on the street or as refugees in some war-torn country because you went to destroy instead of to assist. And that's what you're calling your politic, your diplomacy. So Phi and all that, Vivekananda says, the politics should be one of, there's one race here, there's one Atman. Samadarshitvam, the Atman is equal in everyone, from the ant to the avatar, same Atman in them. How do I make sense out of that? Well, the mechanism's more developed. But the mechanism of the human body is more developed than the ant. See, but all mechanisms are in the realm of becoming, aren't they? Even the avatar has to fall subject to birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death out here. It's just that in his mind he's not falling subject to that. That's a misfiance to him. It's a misreading of Atman to call it nature or material or matter, or say it suffers, or say that it's divided or undivided. It's persiflage to declare such things. You have to leave it untouched as it is, pure and perfect, and realize it there inside of yourself. So there you have the collective mind and the individual mind, the cosmic mind, operating here in dream and deep sleep. Then you have our beautiful Trinity there, which we sing to them. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Eva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. The Trinity, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, which is Shiva, presiding over that. See, they call it the Trimurti. Murti means this divine form. There's 3 of them. And that level of this big, thick white line here, you might call it a granti. You see, it's a knot in consciousness, not a knot in a rope or a knot in your nerves that keeps your prana from flowing and so forth. It keeps your psychic prana from going inwards. And so The bhakta feels that God is the entity and the world is another, you see. God and the world are two different things, usually, to that kind of thinker. Therefore, God reveals himself to him as a person. So God comes to save the bhakta by revealing himself as an incarnation, like in Sri Ramakrishna's case. And therefore the bhakta can, all of a sudden enjoy a very sweet kind of duality indeed. Beta and beta, the distinction of difference, I actually kind of enjoy that, you see. But now I'm more in the understanding that there's a divine being here, and I'm cut in his image, see. So, like Hanuman said about Ram, sometimes I feel like he's my friend, other times I feel like he's my closest companion, other times I feel like he and I are one. It just depends on my mood, you see. So you come closer and closer to those great beings, and you become a mature bhakta. See? And then the Trinity will not only reveal itself to you, and you can be beyond the states of becoming, and you can begin to be more. But being doesn't really happen until beyond vision and beyond deep sleep. Now here you have this level of deep sleep state. See the quote there that we see from the Svetasvatara Upanishad, which we just mentioned. Higher than the personal God is the infinite supreme Brahman, who is concealed in all beings according to their bodies, and who, though remaining single, envelops the whole universe. Knowing that to be the Lord, one becomes immortal. So Svetasvatara Upanishad is very good at making those subtle distinctions. It is that when you're hearing Dharmic teachings, sometimes they're referring to Ishvara, Trinity, and other times they're referring to the Absolute Brahman. They're calling both of those the Lord. But of course, using the term the Lord would infer more some kind of form, something you could envision, something you could see, whether it be in a waking state, visionary state, or deep sleep state. Because of course there's a great seed called Ishvara, or great minds called the Trinity. Sri Ramakrishna said they're like icebergs that never dissolved in the ocean. Age to age, people will remember them. Ram, Krishna, Christ, Buddha. They'll remember these beings because they didn't go completely formless when ages passed. So the cosmic mind will remember them particularly. And some of that will reach down to the collective mind, and some of that will even come to individuals on earth, that they'll be born with some awareness of the fact that God takes on a form. Formlessness and form, we're talking about that right now. So you'd have to be very grateful for any kind of a matrix or a medium called Ishvara or avatar or incarnation of God, or saints and saviors and seers. Those kinds of beings kind of form, they're like a matrix or a medium between form and formlessness to usher you out of one and into the other. And if they have to come back just to help you live in this one, that's not the most satisfying thing to them. They don't want to leave you here. They want to give you the tools and the insights and the wisdom to be able to get yourself out of form when you want to. That's ideal. At the time when the body is diseased or old, you'll want to use that. And at the time when you feel maybe pleasure in heaven isn't enough for you, that you want an uninterrupted bliss that isn't interrupted by being born again in a body, even against your will, what to speak of by your own will, then you'll be able to use these tools to go formless. You do it every night in deep sleep, why not be able to do it consciously? So, as we move through here, anything to be mentioned is, at this level, tamas was predominant. Pretty much you could say in this world, rajas exists, definitely. There's a lot of activities going on out there. And sattva also comes to people. But basically speaking, overall, it's a tamasic kind of vibration that's going on here, spiritually speaking. And you won't really find pure sattva until you're able to get beyond even dreams and visions. That's where a kind of beneficial rajas happens. cosmically speaking. See, so the gunas have their life inside of bodies. Oh, now it's diseased. Now it's okay, and now it's healthy. That's tamas, rajas, and sattva in the body. And then it also happens in your prana. Oh, my prana is very heavy today. That's tamas in the prana. And then, oh, my prana is running ragged, you see. So like a carburetor in a car that's not tuned right, you see, too rich or whatever. You have to tweak it and make it run right. So that's restlessness or rajas inside of the energy. And then there's a sattva energy. Oh, this feels good. I'm all balanced, you see. But then there's also tamas, rajas, and sattva here, and that's really where we take it up as Vedantists and look at it. As spiritual practitioners, we want to be able to control those gunas in the mind. The rest will follow if we do it here. That's a secret, and it's not an unknown secret, but people just won't take the time and energy to even out their minds. They'll try and even out things outside and hope that the mind will follow, but it's not the way to do it. You even out the mind first, and all of this falls into abeyance. That is, obeyance, not abeyance. It will obey you. And so you have to do that. And so this quote from the Upanishad makes it clear that you're headed for a formless state when you're headed towards the Supreme Brahman, as compared to the personal God and where the personal God operates, where it presides over all beings. Because it's going to look down into, from its high perch, it's going to look through the akashas, from the highest akasha right down to the physical akasha. That's what, if you're feeling devotion to God in form right now, then these forms are looking through you. So you have to kind of say this to yourself. Oh, is that you? You see, I think I see you. I just felt you. You see, you have to make the connection between you and that, being and becoming. You see, so the becoming is what you're casting about, thinking, possibilities along with their doubts, courage along with its fear. All of these things have to be put in place, and you have to say emphatically, without doubt, I am that. And as soon as you do that, these souls looking through your eyes begin to look through this eye. And just like Arjuna on the battlefield, when Krishna removed the veils, he saw the cosmic form. He saw this. And it was in its warlike form. It wasn't a pleasant thing. Oh, I think I'll be a little bit terrible today, Ishvara said at the Battle of Kurukshetra. I'm going to appear there in my terrible form. See? So that takes some courage. Those whom misery loves and who can hug the form of death, to them the mother comes. So you have to love misery and suffering, and you have to hug death when it comes at you. That kind of courage it takes in order to have a vision like that. Of course, you can have it on a sattvic day. Oh, today I'm feeling happy. I think I'll appear as a benign God to my votaries. I was wrathful yesterday. I'm tired of that. I think I'll be benign today. So, gods are a little capricious. Got to catch them on a good day if you want the pleasant vision. Like Bhadrakali as compared to Shmashana Kali or something. See, one presides over graveyards. It's not very happy to see her there, you see. One is Bhadra, gentle. See, bears the skull but she smiles. Tells you what it means. So in that way, you see, you go from lower truth to higher truth. Asato ma satgamoyo, tamaso ma jyotirgamoyo, mrichorma amritamgamaya. It's just another way of saying from forma to formlessness. Because knowledge has form, and then it becomes subtle, and then it becomes causal, and it becomes ultimate. Brahmagyan. And so in that way, you're marching up through the realm of a whole coverall term, Saguna Brahman. It has gunas. Everything here has gunas. They're just at different levels of vibration and refinement, or subtlety, or grossness, as the case may be. There's even a causal grossness, you see, where everything is basically sattvic, but there's a rough element to it. So these all intermingle, and the three gunas, that is. So saguna means basically with guna, and you can see the curtain of nescience there. We'll describe that after the break, which we have to take up now. But along with the curtain of nescience, which runs through this, might say, heart chakra, or this what's called Vishnu Granthi, there's this pure intelligence which will transcend the ocean of the curtain of nescience. See, pure intelligence. So those things are coming as you make the bridge from saguna to nirguna. Let's take a break and think about all this, and come back in 10 or 15 minutes with the live streaming. I hope you all stayed with us in our little difficulty with the microphones. We started a little late. Otherwise, of course, you can look back on these classes. But this is the first class of form and formlessness, and the first half of it we've taken it up with this example of the gunas being one way of explaining form and formlessness. So here we will pause for a 15-minute break and return. Thank you for your attentions. We have all returned together, and we hope you're still all with us, the live streaming portion of our audience, as we course our way through this early part, which is actually going to be the first of 4 classes. So this is 3 more Sundays after this will be focused on form and formlessness. And I have many different kinds of charts to show you and different perspectives and everything. So we want to continue with this one. And this one is been taken to Saguna Brahman. And you see this word here along with the Om sign, Mahashakti. And you've entered the realm of not just Maya or Mahamaya or Shakti, but actually to Mahashakti, when you pierce through these subtler inner barriers in your own consciousness that are making things look divided. Waking, dreaming, and deep sleep seem to be 3 separate states. But Brahman is underlying them all. If you realize Brahman, then you would transcend the idea of divisions. And you'd see all as Brahman. That's how they say it, isn't it? All this is Brahman. You're not seeing it because you actually are under the influence of divisiveness, or Shakti Maya is making it look like it's 3 different things, when it's really one. A flower has a color, it has a shape, and it has a word, but it's all the same flower. Like Sri Krishna used to say, man walks down the street, he's got his wife on one arm and his daughter on the other. You see, he treats them both differently, but he knows they're the same. He loves them both equally. So that kind of oneness is there in all things. If the mind and the mind's eye can get over the illusion of two-ness or manyness, or beyond the influence of divisiveness or divisions. So we're looking at this basically as 3, but there's one Brahman infusing all of it, underlying all of it as the foundation. And the mind is climbing out of lower climes, lower atmospheres, and into higher atmospheres. And this is what happens in dream and in vision, and then in deep sleep. And people don't stop to take note of that and affirm that that's what's happening to them. They just let these states come and go of their own accord, according to what? The shifting gunas. So these 2 sides of the chart explain very well how the gunas go, not only traditionally with distorting, veiling, and revelatory power, but also how they also work in terms of the states of our consciousness. So with those 2 ways, if not 3 ways of looking at it, then you can see how your own consciousness has to be affirmed as having levels, but that at the same time you affirm the levels, then you also bring into possibility the insight that there is one underlying reality in all of it. You wouldn't have got to that conclusion unless you had taken note of the divisions. It's just like the 5 elements. You wouldn't really understand them all until you put them together with the senses. And you put those 4 together with the tanmatras, your dream senses and so forth, your dream elements. So all of this is a matter of connection. As one of my favorite ways of teaching is to reconnect things. And that happens all the way up from the element earth to the Atman. From the atomic particle to the atmic particle, if you want to put it that way. And we'll look at that chart too, probably next week. From the atomic to the atmic, and how that's all one thing, but consciousness is looking at it as a shift. And it needs to do that. It just doesn't have to believe in the change that goes on only. It has to know that there's an underlying substratum that's steady, that's stable, that's static, and belies movement, belies change, belies lack of energy and restless energy, belies shifting from waking to dream and back and not knowing that there's anything else. So in that way, then being and becoming can become much more of a study for us, and even becoming can be okay, as long as you don't believe in it sans being. That's basically what people are doing. I'm becoming all the time. Oh, my child, you're growing. Let's measure you on the wall. You were 1.5 feet last year, and now you're 2 inches taller, so you're changing, you're growing. But that soul inside of that body, that little boy, is the same all the time. It's been the same through lifetimes. It's been the witness of everything that it's experienced. It's just a matter of whether it's going to catch up with that witness or not. We often say that faster than speed of sound is the speed of light. And then if you want to go to the next fastest thing, I suppose you could say prana, the speed of energy, that is subtle energy, not gross energy. And then faster than that would be the mind, the psychic prana. And that outstrips all that runs, that's Shakti. She's faster than the fastest. And she can also be slower than the slowest. And she can be higher than the highest, and she can be lower than the lowest. So in that way, you come to this echelon of where Mahashakti presides, and that's pretty much the purveyor of Om. She's got the word in her care. So you heard that old song out of the 60s. He's got the whole world in his hands. You can sing it, you see. But she's got the whole word in her hands. So that's what you have to say to know that she's the purveyor of the word. The word is very powerful. We've studied it in so many ways. And basically the word is here, A-U-M, creation, preservation, and destruction. Or sometimes we call it projection, sustenance, and withdrawal. That's what the Trinity represents. So if you're not into the anthropomorphical, you don't prefer to think of God somewhere existing, they seem mythical to you, then think of them in terms of aspects of power of the word. Because that's what Sri Ramakrishna, why he believed in the oneness of all religions, because each deity in every religion was a dynamic power that existed. And that was his secret to believing in. It's not just, oh, I accept everything in a kind of surface eclectic way. But he knew that each one of those religions and had their deities, and each one of those was a dynamic power that was active, you see, on planes of consciousness. And he had seen these in his meditation, and he was trying to come back and tell us about these. And of course, when he went into the highest formlessness, beyond dynamism, because there's a kind of formless dynamism where she operates, but there's a totally formless, like Krishna is saying, my supremely unmanifested form, that is unbelievable, it's indescribable. And so when he went into that state, and he came back, and they asked him what it was like, he'd try to explain it, but then he'd go into it. So it's very attracting, it's very seductive. You thought about formlessness, you'd go into it, and so you'd be sitting there for another hour waiting for him to come out of it, to try and give you that description of what formlessness is like, supreme formlessness. And then you'd ask him again, and he'd slip back into it again, because suggestion was all the power to him. Once I think on 2 occasions, he made an effort to actually tell us what it was like without going into it. One time he said, well, I felt like I was a salt doll walking into an ocean. And that's a very beautiful saying of his that gives us an idea of what going into formlessness. My form dissolved into formlessness, the name of this class. So there are certain ways in which it can be put in words that kind of give you the gist of it. And maybe you too can become so sensitive in your thinking, or non-thinking in this case, as to take that up and consider it and slip into it. Because don't you do that when you go to sleep tonight? You slip into dream, or you slip into deep sleep. Quite often, you look back on your dreams and you're waking and you see that the dreams happened later. So quite often people go straight from waking to deep sleep, and they skip this forms. You remember that? It's very rare that you can say, well, I just went straight from waking to dream, because if you did, you'd remember more of your dreams. The fact that you've forgotten a lot of your dreams last night means they happened later. You went from waking to deep sleep, and then later on you came back towards waking, and that's when you had those dreams. So you have to sit and meditate on dreaming to bring them back. Beautifully so, meditating on the Dharma brings back realization of who you are. The best way, almost of any way to do it, is just to meditate on these teachings for a whole lifetime, we say. Somebody at the break was saying, it occurs to me that in addition to just putting these on the wall and having people look at them and talk about them, you should keep them on a stand in your house and a pillow in front of them. So people just walk in the door and they sit down like this and they study it for about half hour. They look at it up and down to everything. Maybe you have a notepad. I'm going to ask my teacher about that, because there are teachers of the Dharma. And there should be more of them. So then you can go and ask them, but you fill in so much by considering, and if you have 350 of these, have a nice couple of years. Have a nice day, have a nice year, you should say, because you're sitting in front of one of these every day, or one a week. And it's not just on your wall where you might bypass it, but you have to sit and look at it. So you bring this out of your own consciousness. All of this is within you. And every bit of wisdom is within you. Kings of heaven are within you, is what Christ meant when he said that. It's not just lokas or worlds, but the wisdom that makes up the worlds are also within you. Where are they? Here. The deep sleep seeds make up the worlds. The words make up the worlds. Sadakya. There are 6 ways of realizing Brahman in Tantra, and those basically are through words and mantras, worlds, sounds, matrikas, alphabets. All of these make up a comprehensive inward trajectory which the aspirant or the practitioner has to consider. And that consideration is taking the unreal and making it real. You don't just say it's unreal and has to be skipped over now, because then you jump from here to here and you don't know anything that went in the middle. It'd be like having a pie with only crust. See? I think I'll have a nice piece of pie now. So they left out the middle, right? There's just the upper crust and the middle crust. Maybe they pump some air in there somehow. See, bite into it, poof. But so they left out the filling. You see, so this is all the filling that needs to be considered in the pie of your consciousness, in your collective and cosmic consciousness. And unfortunately, most of us only have a lower crust in this world today. We're crusty. See? And the filling, we haven't even gotten to that yet. What to speak of getting to the upper crust and baking it. See, so our pie is very, very meek and unnutritious and leaving us high and dry without, and that's why we continue to be hungry for it, and we can't satisfy that hunger because we haven't got to the filling yet. Cosmology and philosophy are the filling between form and formlessness. And if I've, in a couple of years, have made 350 charts or so of these teachings from the Dharma, and I'm only scratching the surface possibly, and you can see how much of a filling there is. And all of it is of profound substance. It's not like sitting around and, talking about a murder mystery or something. Oh, I read that. So did I. What did you think? Or even going to college and saying, well, what did he mean by to be or not to be or something, you see, and arguing about it for decades and centuries with your professors and your students. This is truth. You go, you learn it, and that's it. You don't return again when you learn this. This is the graduating school. See, Vedanta is the cutting-edge philosophy. And when we say Vedanta, we really mean Buddhism and yoga and a whole umbrella of Dharmic teachings that bridge on the non-dual. They're not non-dual yet, but that's no reason to criticize them. It'd be like criticizing the filling in the pie and just saying, oh, the crust is the only thing. Or some used to say, well, I don't really like form, I just like formlessness. I said, well, what about a bottle of tasty nectar? Don't you have to put it to your lips to taste it? And isn't the bottle the form? And then the outer form is the label that makes sure you're not drinking poison. Do not drink this. See, so you need the label, you need the bottle, and then you can get the nectar. So pseudo-non-dualism is not a good idea. And you need to fill in these gaps in consciousness. It's your consciousness. The gaps are missing because you're overlooking them. So you have to affirm them. You have to see them and affirm them. That's all done in here. Sadhana, as far as Vedanta is concerned, is all done in your mind. You can just sit like Mauna Kea is sitting right there out that window. I can see practically the highest mountain in the world. It is the highest mountain in the world, along with the one next to it over there, if you measure it from the ocean floor. It's a huge mountain. It's sitting there still for millennia. Occasionally it blows up, it blows its top. But that's what you have to do. The Advaita took the mountain as his teacher of meditation. Oh, you haven't moved for so long, I think I'll do that. Sat down in front of the mountain for days and just meditated with the mountain. Or the big boulder. Nobody's going to come along and move that very, very soon. So that's what this contemplation of saguna and nirguna is about, together as a pair. So that you too can say, when you've had the highest experience, like Sri Ramakrishna told us, God is with form, God is beyond form, and God is beyond both form and formlessness as well. Now that's a comprehensive statement, you see. And so many people are just attached to form and the formless doesn't exist. Or they've learned that there is such a thing as formlessness, but they prefer the form, so they'll push formless under the carpet. Oh, that's the Brahman effulgence. We don't want that. We just want to dance and sing. Or others will just go completely formless, you see, and then deny the worlds of name and form and Ishvara too, completely. That's three different perspectives you're talking about there again. Another Triputi. And you'd be at risk doing that if you were a practitioner that didn't affirm and count everything that happened to you in all the states of your existence. Just get up a notebook. Don't just write down your waking diary. What about your dreaming diary? What about your deep sleep diary? There's going to be fewer pages in it, for sure. But you might have an experience of deep sleep and see the seeds, or see the light. And that light will not be the formless light of Brahman yet. It'll be the dynamism light. See how this light just comes and diminishes as it gets lower and lower? As you get higher, it becomes more and more light. Higher means deeper, of course. None of us are doing this anymore, I hope. Oh, Lord, help me. That's just ignorant. You have to go, oh, Lord, help me, if you're going to... And you're praying to a God with form when you talk about Lord that way. You can't pray to this reality. There's no two in it. There's no prayer and prayee in it. There's no desire to have your prayer fulfilled and the fulfillment of the desire in it. So that's the benefit of knowing form and formlessness. And if you want to step one step down from that as a concession for people who quite can't get it yet, then you go here. Well, I have three. I have a manifest form. I have an unmanifested form. That's what most people are calling waking and deep sleep, with dream in between. But I have a supremely unmanifested form. That's Brahman. That's my highest nature, he says in the Gita. What part of that didn't you understand? And how didn't you understand that highest Brahman is formless and formless only, with a capital F? And it's just not some mere Brahman effulgence, some light that you'd rather not have the experience of so that you could stay comfortably down in the realms of the Trinity and below, playing in the fields of the Lord. Well, I got tired of playing after a while. Go to Buddha, and find out how he transcended playing, lila. Gaudapada didn't like the idea of lila, sporting in consciousness. At a certain time, you're going to have to make that transition, you want to have the tools ready for that. Besides, if you have the experience of formlessness, you can come back to form and be much more effective here than people who have it come back and don't remember it. All the greatest souls have had their experience of formlessness, and then they've returned to the realms of form and been the most good and done the most benefit. Even Sri Krishna says in the Gita, I have loka sangraha. I only have one reason for coming here, from here below, leaving Vishnu and coming into the worlds as an avatar. I only have one purpose for doing that, the highest good of all the worlds and the people there. I mean, it's a little misleading to say, for the highest good of all the worlds don't need your good. They're good and bad, and that's the way they are. Heaven, earth, and hell are all good and bad in an admixture. It's the people in those worlds that you're there to help. You should get that real clear. The worlds are just prefab out of the mind. They're constructed by the minds of all these beings. Didn't we say that? 5, 5, 5, 5. We see how it happens. Concept in the mind coming out of the word, there's the subtle elements, there's turn into the gross elements. There's the subtle senses, I'll turn them into the gross elements. I did this. Consciousness projected this, and then it got into them. That was Ramakrishna's favorite view, short of the non-dual view, is that he said all the worlds are a manifestation of Brahman, and consciousness got into them. See? He liked that view. Penultimately, it's the best view. He said all of this is consciousness playing, moving, growing, going through the illusion of becoming. But it's all just pure being. These two have to exist side by side, hand in hand, like two wings of a bird. So all of that isn't just a preamble. This is really to explain that you're getting into a very subtle level when you go to the seeds of deep sleep and Om and the Mahashakti. And that curtain of nescience is still there because why? Because you see people falling in and out of visions and back to ordinary waking state all the time. And they don't believe their visions, and nobody else believes them either. It's not like you have a lot of support out there for your visions and dream tonight. I had a dream. Never mind. I had a dream. Keep it yourself, please. So there's no interest out there. I want to teach you the Dharma. Not interested. Ambivalent. No interest. Distracted. So we'll take that adamantine practitioner who's an intrepid spiritual journey, wayfarer, you see, to dig deep into this and begin to, like we say, sit in front of something like this and just watch it. Freeze it on your screen after class. See, and just sit there in front of your computer. Better purchase one of these from SRV and do it because it won't hurt your eyes. You just look at it like the computer screen will. So what to say? We've really said most of everything we've had to say about this. You see, Nirguna Brahman, words become sparser and sparser. You can see here the gunas actually even are in abeyance. So first, tamas, rajas, and sattva is an overall generalization. Then the gunas go into abeyance. That's very key. You become triguna tita, that is, free from the three gunas, transcendent of them. You don't suffer them anymore. And if you take them on again, you can suffer them in knowledge of what's happening to you. The dark night of the soul of an avatar at this level is a kind of suffering, but he knows where it comes from, and he knows it'll pass, and he knows what it means. Not like other people who get swept into the ocean of suffering and not knowing where they are, why it's happening to them, and when it'll end. So to be in knowledge of something is to destroy the fear of it, and that leads to freedom. Fear keeps you from freedom. Knowledge of the thing that you feared releases you and gets you into freedom. And that's the whole, in a nutshell, that's the whole ideology behind Dharma, with a capital D. You must get from lower truth to higher truth. Knowledge has to lead to truth, Arjuna, Krishna says, otherwise it can be a danger. You see that in people who are going just so far in knowledge. They know a lot, more than you do about some things, say Sanskrit. But they don't know the higher teachings yet, and so they're stuck in the ego's little store of knowledge. But we just said, aham kritas chapi vyat swarupakam. Go to the essence beyond the ego. Ahamkara swarupakam. See, because the ego is collecting its own little knowledge and keeping you in that little cage of its own knowledge. And you have to strike off your fetters, bonds that bind you down, and go beyond it and get to a higher wisdom. And she's the owner, possessor, purveyor of all that wisdom out of which everything came. That's why we're saying Om is hers. So beyond that, we said the curtain of nescience. We have a separate chart on that, which you can look back on and view. I didn't bring it with us. It doesn't pertain as much to form and formlessness, except to the extent that as the curtain gets thinner, you'll go more formless, and as it gets thicker, you'll see more form. Sri Krishna used to say, farther you go away from the world, the closer you get to Brahman. But the farther you go away from Brahman, the closer you get to the world. So it's sort of like that. The curtain of nescience is predicating, as it were, the difference between thickness and thinness of the curtain of nescience. Nescience means really the opposite of consciousness. You see, you have the predominance of ignorance there, so you don't know the underpinnings or the linchpins that's holding all this together. And if you knew the linchpins, you could go up to one of them, just like a clothespin on a clothesline, and pull it off and watch it fall, the veil fall away. See? Well, I can't see over there. I think I'll take off the clothesline. Oh, now I can see. Take off the clothespin. So there's linchpins to these in consciousness that if you knew where they were, you could take them and have a vision of the light that's beyond them. Quite often this happens to people by grace only. It doesn't happen by their own sadhana. So Sri Krishna says in the Uddhava Gita, the divine likes it very much when he sees people doing sadhana and freeing themselves from bondage. It's kind of ungracious, isn't it, to expect if Ishvara or Avatar will come along sometime and free you, like shed blood for your for your karmas and all that. Why would you want to do that? Why don't you just say, I created my own karma, I got free of it, and have the Lord say, well done. I didn't even have to leave Vaikuntha or Kailash to come help you, or Mani Dvipa. I could stay where I was and watch you go through your dance and get free of the dance and return to me. Did you have fun? Oh, a little. But I think I'm done with it. I went into the bath, I got clean, now I want out. Swami Vivekananda used to say that. This is a gymnasium of souls. Flex your muscles and get out. It's a direct quote from him. So this lower levels of form, are a gymnasium soul. And you know what happens in the gymnasium? Whew, a little perspiration there. It's odorous. It's people doing actions that aren't freeing them too. They're smelling for no reason. They're stinking for no reason. Running their wheels just to come back and do it all over again, never getting fulfilled. So fulfill yourself, Holy Mother said. I hope that everyone will fulfill their desires, and then that last lifetime, in fact, see if I'm right, there it is right there, you see. We'll look at it maybe today if we get to it. But he says many beings are just freeing themselves from karmas, and that will be their last lifetime when they're free of desires. They won't have to come back anymore to the physical form. But you can see there are other forms to come back to. But if you get into the Mahashakti's realm, beyond the curtain of nescience, just to go on with this, there's this pure intelligence, ocean of pure intelligence. And the gunas are in abeyance, and it's formless dynamism, it's turiya. I'm putting in formless dynamism of my own accord there, just like I put the visionary state here to kind of fill out these traditional teachings, waking, dreaming, deep sleep. Well, there's also a kind of visionary state that happens between dream and deep sleep that's very important, that isn't being accounted for there. Same here. The gunas, you have to know that they're in abeyance, and that beyond turiya, there's even turiyatita, a formlessness that's ultimate. The hailstone not only fell into the ocean, it forgot that it ever dreamed itself a hailstone in the first place. And it looked back and said, how did I do that? How did I separate myself from the ocean and become a piece of ice? Next time I'll separate myself from the ocean, I'll become an iceberg. It might be better. But to become this little bit of solidified matter, well, how did I do that and why? It didn't get me anywhere because there's no change here. We were talking about change in the first half. Everything is change here. It's called Maya. You cannot find the changeless here. No man has seen God with these two eyes. So you have to go beyond this realm to see God. Come to find out that it's not going to be out in outer space, but it's in inner space where you find gods first, and then eventually God, if you want to call it that. Ask any of the great souls in India, and they ask them, is there a God? And they'll say, no. Because they know what you're thinking. You're thinking that there's some form somewhere. But Brahman has no form. Almighty Father has no form. Buddha nature has no form. Yahweh has no form. Great Spirit has no form. There is such a thing as formlessness, and it's a supreme formlessness, and there's no divisions in it. It's even beyond light and darkness. So if you're talking about it as light, then you're also falling short of a good description for it. Study the 40 verses of the Advaita in the Advaita Gita, and he'll tell you what it is and what it isn't. So here we have a quote, just like we had, God appears as a form to the Bhakta so he can understand. Here, to the Jnani, we have a quote. The Jnani, through his discrimination, realizes that the ego and the universe are both illusory and perceives Brahman in its own consciousness. In his own consciousness, sorry. So, the distinctions, as I said it before we took our break, are beginning to disappear. The lines of demarcation between matter and spirit beginning to disappear. Show me the line of demarcation where matter begins, where matter ends and spirit begins. There's a famous quote from one of the disciples of Ramakrishna. Show me that line of demarcation where matter ends and spirit begins. Ultimately, there are none. Relatively, these are they. They're curtains in your own consciousness, and yes, they're caused by you, but you're going to have to deal with the collective consciousness too, because your ancestors want you to stay with them. And most people want to stay with their ancestors. Don't mess with family. Buddha was to mess with family, you see. Christ wanted to mess with family. I've not come to bring peace to earth, I've come to bring a sword, and with that sword I will separate father from son, mother from daughter. Does that sound like he wasn't messing with family? And you could ask, why did he say that? Because the father is spiritually inclined and the son's an idiot. Because the mother is worldly and the daughter is spiritual natured. Whatever the case may be, in any number of permutations amongst your ancestors, there's always a few that want to get free of the bondage that is the realm of the ancestors. Not very high heaven. Lower heaven is the realm of your ancestors in our tradition. Higher heaven, a little better. Pious people are there. And there's a doorway out of that, just like through these grunties, these subtle knots in consciousness. So, Vedic, Kundalini, Vedantic, Samkhya. There's at least 4 Indian darshanas incorporated in this chart. And basically under the heading of the ancient Vedas, Saguna and Nirguna. So when you've penetrated through this, you see, and there's just another very subtle granthi here. You could call it a granthi between the third eye and the crown. And then is when you're approaching this, finding Brahman in your own consciousness. See here, gunas predominant, tamas predominant, rajas predominant, sattva predominant, gunas in abeyance, gunas transcended. So they went into seed form here, but they could come back, couldn't they, conceivably? But if you go beyond it, no more gunas, sorry, no more attributes. Brahman is attributeless, is formless, with a capital F. There at the top, as we finish this chart, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's quote, Did you know what God with form is like? Like bubbles on an expanse of water. Various divine forms are seen to rise out of the great akasha of consciousness. Remember the word he used for it? A great akasha of consciousness. Akhanda Satchidananda. The incarnation of God is one of these forms. It rises out of the unconscious, the great akasha, you see, and then takes on a form. The primal Shakti sports through through the incarnation. So she's there with the Word, and the Trinity is there, and the primal Shakti will sport through them as the avatar, through the great souls that come. That's her. Like the teaching is that your guru is the Trinity. When you're looking at your guru, you're not looking at anything other than the Trinity. That's God with form. So then what's operating both of them? The Mahashakti, the primal energy. She's causing me to lift my arm, Sri Ramakrishna say. Without her, I can't even do this, he said. If I have an itch up here, can't do it. Unless she says, okay, go ahead, raise your arm, scratch it. She gives permission for all things. She animates all things. Even the inanimate gets animated. Like if that big rock hasn't moved for a long time, I don't think I want to move it. Earthquake time. That's her in a subtle form working its way down into the 5 elements and causing some movement. So not even a blade of grass can grow without her knowledge, they say. And that's, of course, her prana that's in the blade of grass causing it to grow. You can't say, the blade of grass is mother. It's her prana in it. For mother, you're going to have to go beyond a blade of grass to find her, of course. So, a beautiful quote by Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. I think we've covered the entire chart there, and it's about time we did go through this one thoroughly, because we've seen it before. But this is one of the most recent ones to be colorized. So you're seeing, I think for the first time, the colorized version of it. Now let's look over here to an accompanying chart to finish up today's class, the ancient chest of consciousness, and of course my humorous subtitle for it, because driving along the freeway, you'll see it quite a bit. Self-storage. You can store whatever belongs to you there, but what really belongs to you is inside of your mind. It came out and filled a whole garage full of crap that you own now, that's weighing you down, that you want to put on a garage sale. But the seeds to that are back in the chest of consciousness. So it's the secret of spiritual self-storage. Spiritual self-storage. We need to drive along the freeway and see that self-storage and make it, and because we sat down and looked at this chart, think, I know the deeper truth to that. Otherwise I have to rent it. Maybe it has rats. The owners aren't honest. I have to sign papers. I have to go to the bank to get the money. See, there's a whole bunch of hassles around doing whatever out there. But if you know the meaning to the thing, then you know where it came from and that it's all inside of you, then it's easy. It makes it much more a matter of ease for you to carry out the functions of daily life, knowing yourself, knowing that everything has come from, is stored back in you. So don't forget this chart, how all the seeds are stored in deep sleep when you look at this chart. And one of my all-time favorite quotes in any scripture is there. I actually love it. At the time of the great dissolution, I, means mother, withdraw all beings and worlds back into my unmanifested Prakriti. So all of this back into deep sleep state. While I myself disappear into a formless Brahman. When the dance of Maya begins again, I loose all beings forth into the realms of becoming. All the while, nothing is born, nothing dies, nothing is created, nothing gets destroyed. It's the mother's wisdom in a nutshell, really. It's how things come and go without ever changing their nature. And it's true of everything. Beings, objects, worlds, her, Om, everything back into the formless Brahman. But she'll loose it forward again because Brahman doesn't want it to go forward again. Brahman doesn't have a desire for worlds. Brahman's formless, it's worldless. It's wordless too. Why do you think Jesus said in the beginning was the world, the word was with God, then the word was God? Two of those statements mean the word isn't God. It's his word. God and his word must be different if it was in the beginning. But finally when it was God, that's when the two merged, you see. So when the word merges with God, all of this that came out of the word will merge with it. But who's operating that function? Brahman doesn't operate anything. It's inactive. It's beyond the gunas, so it can't be rajasic to be active. So just to look at his Shakti and say, will you do this for me, please, as it were. See? So she'll loose it forth. I like that expression in English. I would loose it forth. Like Sri Ramakrishna saying, consciousness gets into things and plays, but first the things have to become manifested. And science thinks that that's happening just by nature over 4 billion years. But the mind, all nature is in the mind. See, my manifested Prakriti, then my unmanifested Prakriti. Prakriti means nature. It's just that in the West we don't know that there's an unmanifested side to nature out of which this manifested portion came from. If we knew just that much, we'd make so much sense out of spiritual and philosophy of the seers. If we just knew that much. I mean, this is what's disarming about this statement. She says so much there. Then all of a sudden she says, but all of that is nothing. You see? Nothing is born, nothing dies, nothing is created, nothing gets destroyed. That's the disarming part of it. So that's the second thing you have to know. After there's a manifested and unmanifested side to things that's in your own consciousness as dream and waking, then you have to know on top of that that in this play, there's nothing happening. There's no transformation going on that's real. There's no change going on that's real. There's no suffering going on that's real. There's no karma going on that's real. There's just the Atman in its perfect poise and magnificent glory, and that's you. And so you come to find that out, and like I said in the first half, affirm it. Live in it from then on. There's just nothing else to do now. Now, it's too much trouble to raise and lower my eyebrows, Yavadut says. He just wants to sit with his eyes half closed all the time. Like Sri Ramakrishna said, there's Vishnu Yoga, and there's Shiva Yoga. Vishnu Yoga is just sitting with eyes half open like this, half closed, half open. Shiva Yoga is eyes completely closed, dissolution of all the worlds. So in Vishnu Yoga you're seeing outside and you're seeing inside. Shiva just says, blast the whole thing. It's too much of a problem. I'm dissolving it right now, on the spot. Goodbye. Like Buddha, I'm gone and gone forever. Have no more hope for me. Formless Dabhaga. If you want to say it in pidgin. Formless Dabhaga. He went formless completely and didn't come back. He might send some emanations back, but too much trouble to raise and lower the curtain of nations anymore. You see. Don't want to do it. So beautiful quote out of the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam by who? Bhagavati Durga Devi. Now, there you see, that was on this chart, Mahashakti. You see Mahamaya and Mahashakti there above her. The ring of truth is there, which is a little pun on my part for this image. She carries this ring of truth. Everything she says has a ring of truth to it, in other words. That's the absolute truth, you see. And then you see around her Shishti Stiti Lai. Shishti Stiti Lai. You know what that means? Pretty much projection, sustenance, and withdrawal. You might refer to it in one of the famous devotional wisdom songs, I should say, by Kamalakanta, when he sings that kind of thing. Kamalakanta, Haye Branta, Hulesho Namashanadil. Kamalakanta, Haye Branta, Hulesho Namashanadil. Bare bare ashi dukh rashi rashi, bare bare ashi dukh rashi rashi. Jatane shabe ar kadin shukir, ashana karo ar kadin shukir, ashana karo ar kadin. So it says basically, bewildered by Maya, Kamalakanta has forgotten the 9 months and 9 days of suffering in his mother's womb. Misery and pain are the outcome of limited existence. How many more lives of ignorance can I bear? It's like saying, wake up now, you must, oh mind, wake up to everything that's within you and be in bliss. There's nothing that's not in you. Find it and then transform the poison in it, like Shiva does, and enjoy the nectar inside of you, the nectar of pure conscious awareness. So he also sings there in relation to what I was saying here. Bhabe Brahmapad, Akaya Shampad, Sharanakari Vijayadin. Bhabe Brahmapad, Akaya Shampad, Sharanakari Vijayadin. Singing Para Brahmapad, the feet of Brahman. When you realize the feet of Brahman as your eternal treasure, you'll remember this very important day. Obtaining this precious treasure, creation, preservation, and destruction will be at your disposal. Shristi Stiti Lai. I didn't sing that part. Shristi Stiti Ayahite Hai. Shristi Stiti Ayahite Hai. Shehabe Kamaradin Shukir. Ashana Karo Akadim. Shukir. Ashana Karo Akadim. So, Shristi Stiti Laya Haite Hai in Bengali. So, when you realize the feet of Brahmans, creation, preservation, and destruction, you'll realize it's all in you. And the gods that control it are all in you too. You've gone from the individual to the collective to the cosmic in 3 steps, and all that's left for you now is, how many more lives of ignorance can I bear? Do I want to come back and do this all over again? Do I even want to come back and learn the Dharma all over again? That would be probably the least you could expect from rebirth if you had to return here. If I come back, at least give me parents that will teach me the Dharma so I don't have to go through 20, 30, 40, 50 years of trying to find it again outside. when it was all inside of me all the time. Musk deer runs around in the woods looking for that scent, Sri Krishna said. Where is it? In its own navel. You get musk out of the deer's navel. But he's looking for it out there, smelling it out there, doesn't know what's inside of himself. So lifetime after lifetime, he says, I'm going on suffering, and I have to look every time for the truth. I'm tired of that. The truth is immanent. The truth is all-pervasive. The truth is my own precious treasure. Why should I have to lose it and find it all the time? What fun is there in that after a while? Maybe at the beginning, hide and seek, okay, I'll give it to you. See? But after a while, isn't it just pointless? Do you just want to be instead of become? No formlessness and not just form? So this is what we're on about today. The secret of spiritual self-storage. It's all within you. Kings of heaven and earth in you is probably the most evident saying in our Christian tradition today of that secret, or of that fact. So, Shrishti Stithilaya, that's why I refer to Kamalakanta's beautiful song. Creation, preservation, destruction, all within you. Now we've worked our way down half of that chart already because it very much is sort of a mirror of this. This is more widespread. And this is more about, more cosmological, philosophical, and this is more personal, individual, and cosmological. But we're getting to that part. So we already quoted Sri Krishna's saying there out of the Gita, I have my manifested form, I have my unmanifested form, and I have my supremely unmanifested form. Notice that unmanifested is capitalized in that third instance. He wants to draw attention to the fact that that's the supreme Brahman. And that's my ultimate nature, he says, is Brahman. Across there, I put that other beautiful saying of Christ, as Krishna and Christ were the same soul, really. All great souls are the same. And they've realized the highest truth. The divisions have disappeared. They might come back. People might form religions after them. But they are in concurrence about the truth of the thing, because they've seen the truth of the thing. So Jesus said in that way, in my Father's mansion there are many chambers. Usually you hear that much of it, but I like the rest of it. Abiding places, homes of rest, of peace, and sojourn. Not beautiful, because basically you could come home and rest, and you could be at peace, or you could keep sojourning. See? But if you know that it's all within the Father's mansion, that you're in the Father's mansion, even when you're down here in the worlds of hearing, tasting, touching, hearing, smelling, earth, air, fire, water, and ether, then you're okay. See, it's sporting in the fields of the Lord. So, until such a time as you don't want to sport anymore. There's a song in India that says, after I sported in the fields of the Lord, I went back to Mother, you see. And I said, I'm going back again. She said, she winked at me. She said, wink means don't forget where you came from when you get involved down here with these 24 cosmic principles, because they're very sticky. It's like you're a fly and that's flyer paper, you see. Everyone gets stuck to them. Oh, water. And they're not just happy just with water. Let's see, how about something fermented in it? And then the world goes to hell in a handbasket. Murders happen, various things. Places of worldliness spring up, where souls are doing ignoble things all the time, not thinking a high thought even by accident. And so the whole thing gets lost, and that wink had no purpose. Oh, my son is lost down there. Ay vey, what do I do? Well, I have an arrow going from Srishti, projection, because we say in India that all the worlds are a projection of the mind, sankalpa, vikalpa, and it's done out of desire. So if you're at that place where you're sojourning, that you're not at rest or at peace anymore, like Jesus said, but you still have a desire to sojourn, then you're probably going to have to get together with some beings and make a plan. So like you could go to them and say, can I join in the folly or the fun? This is depending on what it is. And then you have to get together with the gods and goddesses of that realm, and then you'll have to get together with the celestials and the angels, and then with your ancestors, and finally you can find your way here and have all this fun we're having here in the body. Aren't we? Aren't we just having a lot of fun now? Working, striving, growing when we don't grow, dying when we don't die, being born when we don't ever get born. Nam Richorna Shanka Name Jati Beta. I never had a birth. I never died because I never had a birth. I had no father, no mother. Shankara sings in his Stotram, Nirvana Shatkam. So, all this fun we're having down here means we're going to have to enter into the causal realms, Karna Jagat, then into the subtle worlds, Sukshma Jagat, and into the gross worlds. So I've put these as three drawers on the chest, the ancient chest of consciousness. She owns this. She dances on it. And her energy shoots all the way through it in different forms. That is psychic prana, subtle prana, gross prana, deep sleep, waking, dream, waking. Could be assigned to each one of those. In fact, let's see what is assigned to one of those. On this side, the first drawer, the causal realm. Karna means cause. So there you have all objects as seed essences, or bijams. Heard the word? Your mantra has a bijam in it if you've been given it. The bijam is the power part of it that invokes the deity and animates you, animates the mantra. So that's the causal state, or deep sleep you could call it. You see over here, it's the Anandamaya Kosha. It's your ego enjoying bliss. Not the bliss of Brahman, its own store of bliss, whatever it can manage to preside over. And so these are the three worlds. And also here you see deep sleep, dreaming, and waking. So this, you get the connections to this chart. And then the second world is a subtle world, Shukshma. So Sukshma means, Sukshma Sharira is like your subtle body. And Karna Sharira would be your gross body. So you have a body that goes with each of these. Stula Sharira would be your gross body. And causal would be your causal body. So you have the three worlds. So across from the subtle worlds, Sukshma Jagrat, what does it say? All objects as mental constructs and thoughts. So it starts off as seeds, then the mind waters them. Thought is watering them. Even here, you can think something and it'll happen. And maybe you don't think it and it won't happen. Depending on whether that thing is something you desire, that's good, or something that's detrimental, you'll want to be careful with your thought, because it has that power. Which is why Mother doesn't give deep thinking to fools, because they'd make even a worse mess out of this world. Look at what happened with managing the atomic particle. That's a kind of knowledge. It's not as high as the pranic particle, the mental particle, the intelligent particle, and the atmic particle, nowhere near. Those are four more worlds inside. But out here on this world, get a little bit of knowledge about something like that, what's going to happen amidst the pack of fools. Cause suffering with it. Some will try to cause a little benefit with it. Even that will probably go awry, because others will be in charge of what's supposed to be beneficial. You see, can't win for losing, as my grandmother used to say. So you're seeing what we're saying here. See objects as seed, then objects as thought, and then finally here in the Stula Jagat, all objects as physical forms, matter. So without any bones or any punches pulled at all, you see how India says, out of the causal into the subtle, out of the subtle into the gross. It all comes from seeds in your mind. These seeds are in their mind. Lord Brahma particularly. Lord Brahma's got some real powerful seeds, bijams, that he can say if he wants fire or air to manifest, worlds to come about. This is a great mind. These three minds will preside over 4 yugas, each yuga being 480,000 years old, times 4, times 8, times 16, and that will be a Mahayuga. It's a long time. So these are great minds that are assigned to preside over the realms of projection from the Mahashakti for that long time, and then they'll turn and dissolve into Brahman. And 3 other great minds will take their place. That's how it's explained in the tradition. So, what caused them to turn? See, I used to say that. Somebody came up to me, a very knowledgeable person, said, I really liked what you said about Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva having their back to Mother's light. And Mother's light shines through them. And it turns into Srishti, Sthiti, and Laya. And all these worlds get projected by the Trinity. Because she's a bit ambivalent about getting too much into action too. She likes to lean more towards Brahman and away from the worlds. The worlds are really pretty much our doing. But as long as my children want to sport and play there, then we'll let the Trinity do the work. You see? So her light shines through them and their backs to her, you see, as it were. She's deeper inside and they're a little bit more outward in these worlds. So then when it comes time and they're done, they'll turn around finally and look at her and merge with her. And then she'll put out an advertisement in the cosmic newspaper. New Lord Brahma needed. Apply within. See? Apply within at the Shakti's office, you see. So, and then some souls will come forward. No, you're not quite ready for it. You just remain a lower god. How about me? Can I be Lord Brahma? It's just sort of like here on Earth, you see. A bunch of march of presidents, and so forth. Governors. Proprietors of the land. Well, the inner lands are much like that. At least in purveyorship. So, no doubt, I hope, then, how India views how things come into manifestation from seeds. And there are things beyond seeds. Seeds are in deep sleep. What's beyond seeds has to be considered. This is form. This is formlessness. Now let's all go home and think about it. That's the title of my 4 talks. I don't have to give the other 3. Except to show you a bunch of other charts that pose this in different ways so that it gets drilled into our consciousness, because we're down here, remember. The seeds have become rather gross, haven't they? And what happens to gross air, gross ether, gross fire, gross air? It becomes polluted by what happens down here, doesn't it? And is it any fun anymore to breathe it? Water, if it becomes polluted anymore? Anyone want to go back down to Earth? Oh, not in this age, thank you very much. They don't have any water down there worth drinking, for one thing. I'll wait till the next age and, go early in the next age before they get a hold of it and pollute it. See? So, seeds, thought, matter. I mean, you could just pretty much put it in that order. Causal, subtle, gross. The best words to choose in English. Over here you've got the 5 sheaths. Everyone knows those, the Adara system of Vedanta. Anandamaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, and Annamaya Kosha. Anna means food. So we're here at the sheath of food, which we're going to have a puja to Holy Mother right after we end this class, and then we're going to fill our sheaths of food with some good prasad tonight. And we wish you were all here to join us. But in the meantime, this kind of food is our first directive. We want to know where food came from. And it didn't come from just seeds that are in your little packets that you buy at the grocery store or something, the nursery. Those seeds came from subtler seeds, and subtler seeds all the way back into us. Same with the sheaths. The Annamaya Kosha dies, as it were, decays. It goes back to energy. Pranamaya Kosha. When that stops flowing, it goes back into the mind that produced everything, cosmic, collective, and individual mind, just like that. Goes to individual mind, to collective, collective back to cosmic, and merges, if you're so fortunate. Then the Manomaya Kosha will go back into intelligence. What's this? Pure intelligence. And finally into Anandamaya Kosha, this sheath of bliss, they call it. And in the sheath of bliss, it'll begin to lose its grasp on its own individual bliss, and it'll, like Brahma, turning back and looking at the mother when it's done with its purveyorship over a Mahayuga, it'll let go of its personal bliss of Shrishti, and it'll get the real bliss. It'll merge completely into that ocean of Brahman. Only thing left here is to say these two quotes, and we are coming right to the end of our time. And these are I thought it would be interesting to put one of the very knowledgeable Western scientists at the turn of the century, last century that is, and what he said. Sir James Jeans had some very interesting things to say about this idea. If we call it an idea, we look at it more as a relative truth. The idea that it's not just nature or what religions say God creates these worlds. Neither of those India accepts. It's the mind that does it at these three levels. And so some Western scientists thought about that, heard it, and said this: as we inspect it, means nature, over periods of time, the universe begins to look more like a great thought rather than a great machine. Beautiful. Some Western thinker is sitting up and finding out that Romain Rolland and other great savants of the West turned to the Upanishads and found out this secret. Like I said, that's the first secret you're going to want to know, and then it'll lead to other ones, that the mind projected all of this in these ways that we've been talking about today, from formlessness to form. And that's very important for us right now in the West, to have a few of us understand this, champion that view, take on that perspective and spread it. Because the other, both the theological and the scientific, are not doing it for us. That's two rocks in a hard place. If environment's getting spoiled and polluted, and our minds aren't getting enlightened, and religion is becoming irreligion, it should be pretty evident to us that we need to take a different perspective. So we should champion something that's very ancient, that has to do with an ancient chest of consciousness which is inside of you. So that you're both responsible for what happens and you can correct it if it wasn't to your liking. So beautiful. On the other side, he said this further. That is Sir James Jean. Mind no longer appears to be an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. That's evolutionary, right? Body, brain, mind, that all came about over a long period. So that's backwards, see, the way that we look at it. Mind first, then brain, then matter is how we look at it. So he says, no longer appears to be an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We are beginning to suspect that we ought to rather hail it as the creator and governor of this realm. And here's the great governors, let's see, of mind, the Trinity, and then finally the lower gods and so forth are other purveyors with less responsibility than the Trinity and less power, nevertheless in charge of the ancestors, celestials and ancestors who are in charge of the humans then. But we want to break all those bonds, realize all of this within ourself, and realize the self and the great self. That's probably about as much time as we have. We'll look at all of this through other perspectives of India and its great teachings next week at the same time and the same station. I always wanted to say that. So here we will end our first class on form and formlessness and retire to our puja and our prasad dinner. We hope all of you also have a beautiful day or evening tonight, depending on what part of the world you're watching from and what time it is there. It's all relative. Om Sato, Om Sato Ma Sadgamoya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamoya, Mrichorma amritam gamaya abira bira mayeti rudrayate dakshinamukam tenamam pahinicham om shanti shanti shanti. Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, and from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.